Okay, I'm James Osborne. I'm with Osborne Technology Consulting. First off, let me start out by telling y'all that I'm a geek. I'm not a salesperson. I work with computers. People scare me. That's why I work with computers. So keep that in mind when you're doing the evaluations. Ransomware and other threats, how BDR might save the day. Basically, what everyone else said. Thank you very much. All right, I'll see if I can bring something else to this, but it's probably going to be a very short presentation because it seems to have been the topic du jour. Basically, we need to rethink backup. What we used to do for backup doesn't really cut it anymore. Now, we're still facing the same threats that every business has faced, all the way back to my 100 times great-grandfather who sold, beer from a clay pot in the cradle of civilization. We've got your fire, your flood, your tornado, your earthquakes, your locusts, your blood rain, barbarian invasions, what have you. We have to worry about that. So we've got all of those that we have to worry about. But unlike my great, however many times great-grandpappy, we have other stuff we have to worry about. We got people, both people inside and outside of our organization that can accidentally delete things, open the wrong thing, sabotage stuff if they're ticked off, as well as people outside who are trying to take us down. So we have to worry about that. And it's our job to keep the data available so that our companies can do whatever they do to make the money that they pay us. Because ultimately that's why all of our companies are in business, is to pay us. Maybe it's a little self-centered, but. So some of the threats we have always had to face, viruses, Trojans, spyware, things like that. Viruses are luckily not as big a deal as they used to be, at least not the traditional viruses. I remember, 20 years ago, viruses they wanted to do two things. They wanted to reproduce, and they wanted to destroy stuff. Sounds an awful lot like teenagers. Nowadays, the folks who are making the viruses, well, they've grown up a little bit, and they're middle-aged, and they got jobs, and they got bills, so they're trying to make a buck. So the viruses are, while they're still there, they're there for other purposes. They're there to spread nefarious packages. We have to worry about hackers, and that could be someone who's trying to hack into our systems to steal our data, someone who's doing phishing to try and steal our data. They're going to do it to try and steal money directly from us or sell our data on the black market. And they can do this by taking advantage of holes and deficiencies in our systems, things like that. But they can also do something from a human angle, social engineering. The quote says at least one employee will click on anything, and oftentimes that's all you need to get somebody into your systems. And depending on what control you have, they have that control. Now, a newer threat. Hey, it's ransomware. Anybody ever heard of ransomware? So, ransomware is software that encrypts your data. They lock the key away, they store it somewhere, and they tell you, you've got so long to pay for this stuff, or we're going to throw the key away, and then you lose your data. Probably. In some instances, the encryption has been broken, so if you get hit by ransomware, it's not 100% true that you're going to die, that your data is toast, but it's probably really bad. So they give you so long to pay the ransom, and if you don't, they delete the key and bye-bye data. Now there's a small variant that tries to get you to play the bad guy. There are a few of these ransomware that will give you credit for spreading it for them, giving it to your neighbors. Yeah. And I honestly don't know what's worse. Facing the fact of all my data's gone, or having to align myself with the dark side. The ransom isn't what breaks the bank. Most of the ransomware out there, the average price is between $500 and $2,000. In a few cases, 10% or so, it's $5,000 or more. But that's not the big deal. That's not what kills you. It's your downtime, it's the fact that you're losing the data, things of that nature. And I'm breezing through this. If there's something that what we haven't covered, stop me and we can talk in more detail. Windows is the leading target for ransomware. It is hitting other systems, but not a whole lot. OS 10, Linux, and Android have got a little bit. And then there's a little bit on mobile devices. It's basically after Windows because Windows is by far the majority of the systems out there. So a couple of examples, and I'm sure we've heard all these examples throughout the day. The LA hospital, they got hit with ransomware. They had to pay a $17,000 fine. They think it happened because an employee opened an email they shouldn't have, and it got in. It took them, if I remember correctly, it took them a week to get everything together to get their data back. What else? Oh, there's an Austrian hotel, a very nice resort that got hit. They ended up having to pay a $1,500, I think, fine. And what happened to them, the computer that controls the door locks, the card readers and everything, it got hit. So they had all their guests, couldn't get into the room, couldn't get into the gym, couldn't do anything. So they had to pay in order to get this stuff unlocked to get people back into their rooms. Unfortunately, they didn't address the problem, and they got hit 2 more times. They finally switched back to old-fashioned keys. There's a charity in Canada that got hit. This little lady who runs a charity for homeless dogs, doing something with them. I don't remember exactly what it was, but she got hit with a $1,500 ransom. Now, luckily, she got on the news in the local town, personal interest story, and people were all up in arms. They had a campaign. They raised the money. She was able to pay the ransom. Yay! It's all good. She didn't address the original problem, and she got hit again the next month. This is an example of a London restaurant website that they hacked the website, and it was being used to host some of the keys and to spread the infection. So this is big business. Ransomware now has help desk. Yeah, a help desk, English only support, where they will answer your questions about what do you need to do to decrypt your software. And this is, the guys. This is the crooks. And then WannaCry. I remember hearing that a couple of times today, so people talking about that. It hit May 12th, I think, and in a week, it affected over 200,000 computer systems in 150 plus countries. The really sad thing, it took advantage of a security hole that had been patched almost 2 months prior. So everybody who got hit hadn't patched their systems. Luckily, it didn't take off nearly as badly in the United States as it did in Europe. The UK health, I forget what it is, but I mean, they got hit, so like all their hospitals in the UK were shut down. They had to cancel appointments, cancel surgeries and things like that because they couldn't get into any of their records. The second largest telecommunications company in the world, Spain's Telefonio or something like that, got hit and they were down. Transportation, the trains in Germany, trains in Russia, banks all over Europe were hit and they were down. And what happens if you don't pay? Well, you don't get your data back, like this police department that lost 8 years worth of digital evidence because they didn't pay the ransom and they didn't have good backups and they were toast. have an instance of a grocery chain in Canada. They put an update onto their cash register system, and apparently it wasn't well vetted, and boom, they got hit. They were down for a couple of days. San Francisco, their train system, Black Friday last year, they got hit. They decided not to pay the $73,000 ransom because they had good backups. But they didn't have a good continuity solution. They were down 2 days, Black Friday, Saturday, while they were doing the restores. 735,000 rods a day were offered for free at $2, $2.25 a pop. So to save 73,000, they lost 1.65 million in revenue. So I've got this idea. Did anybody get one of my thumb drives?
Yes.
Okay.
But I haven't plugged it into anything yet.
Here. Plug it in. I'm going to start Inverse Technologies. Ransomware as a service. And that line in the middle was supposed to be gone. Ooh. So I had 50 thumb drives. Obviously, not everyone got them. But let's assume, for the sake of argument, that everybody grabbed a thumb drive. Let's assume that half of you plug them in and you'll get infected. And let's assume I charge a $500 ransom to clean your infection. And you all agree to pay. That means $12,500 in revenue for me. Now, thumb drives cost me $100. I had my lovely assistant. I'm paying her $100 for it. She's family, so she's not making much money. So it cost me $200 to do this. That's a 6,200 or 6,200% ROI. That doesn't look right.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. I made a hell of a lot of money. This is great. I just celebrated my 4-year anniversary in business, so let's take the weekend off. No, seriously, how about this? The American Dental Association is having their annual convention in 2 months in Atlanta. I say we get a booth. There's 25,000 minimum, or 25,000 attendees minimum. Okay?
You're recording this, right?
Hypothetically, we spend $10,000 on a booth. That's a lot more than we spend on a booth here. We spend $50,000 on USB sticks. I don't get family, I get professional models, you know, somebody who can really schmooze. No offense. So we need to pass the hat and raise $62,000 to fund this. We hand out 10,000 USBs. 50% of the attendees get it and plug it in. We charge $500 in ransom per stick. Total cost is $62,000. Total revenues of $2.5 million. This is big business.
And who's going to get us out of prison?
Are you looking for backers?
I'm sorry?
You looking for backers?
Yes. Meet in my booth afterwards and we'll discuss the terms.
What security do you have for keeping us out of prison?
Well, we'll have to relocate to another country. Somewhere that doesn't have an extradition treaty. We'll talk to your firm. No, ransomware is big business. I don't know if anybody hit on this today, but it's not kids and independent people doing it for the most part. It's people that are going and punching a clock 9 to 5 in Russia and China and India. This is their job, to hack your systems, to write this software, to rip stuff off, because we're talking a hell of a lot of money. It's like $35 billion last year, or 2015, I think is the last year I've got numbers for. It's a ton of money. So, I'm sorry, I jumped the gun. Total profit of $2.4 million. So, This is from Malwarebytes, the state of ransomware among small businesses. This is the last 12 months. 22% of organizations have lost some time due to ransomware. Now that's either because they've had to restore stuff or they've been down while they were paying the ransom, something like that. 81% have experienced some sort of cyber attack. 66% have suffered a data breach where something has apparently been stolen. And 35% were victims of ransomware. So what are our options? Well, here's the easy one. Let's not get hit. I say we take our computers and we lock them in a room. We take that room and put it in a vault, drop it at the bottom of the ocean. If nobody can get to our data, they can't steal it, they can't encrypt it, they can't screw with it, it's safe. Except, of course, we can't get to it, so we can't do what we need to do. All right, so that's not a good idea. Let's make our data more secure. And I know people were talking about this. Antivirus, firewalls, email scanning, passwords, end-user training, anti-malware, the open DNS. Let's do whatever we can to make ourselves more secure. It's going to work for some of us, but somebody's going to draw the short straw. So what do we do if we've gotten hit? Well, you pay the ransom. And in order to do that, you've got to get a Bitcoin wallet. I know Bob was talking about this. Does anyone else have a Bitcoin wallet in the room? Okay. And Bob, you mentioned how it was a pain to get set up. And you were talking
We'll talk afterwards. You set up the ransomware and I'll help them pay.
You got the wallet now, so you can
let
set
everybody
up
fumble there. Just call it Bob.
Okay. You've got to purchase enough Bitcoin to pay the ransom, which I think Bob mentioned can be a pain because there are limits. Also, your credit card companies, your banks don't like Bitcoin. I've heard of people who have had their accounts terminated because Bitcoin is direct competition and they don't want you to take your business elsewhere. Now, it doesn't happen often, but I have heard of people who've had it. And then you pay the ransom. You hopefully receive the encryption key. In the ransomware, the people who pay the ransom, about 97% of them get a key. About 7%, or 93% rather, about 7%, they're left hanging. Now, that's,
It's not very good.
well, 93% is pretty decent because I don't know how many of those 7% who didn't get the key, maybe they got the key but they worked with the system, they tried to decrypt the stuff somehow on their own, or they tried to restore. And if you do that, that dramatically affects your options for recovery. That key may not work then. But, yes, sir.
And it's funny too, I know there were some ransomware variants where they were eager to hijack your data, but then they had the little chat. You know what I'm talking about? They would actually have this little chat program where it's like, did the encryption key not work? Here, just contact our help desk. And you'd actually talk to these people and it's like, hey, my key didn't work. Like, oh, well, here you go. And it was, they want your money so freaking bad. It is crazy.
Yeah, well, they've got to offer good customer service.
Yeah.
And they've got to try and get your data back, because if word gets out that,
Well, that's the point.
It's not working.
Yeah,
Nobody will.
exactly. And, it's a really sucky business model, but it's a business model. So, you receive the key, and you decrypt your files, hopefully. The decryption process can take a while, depending on your hardware. The encryption process probably took a while, but you didn't notice it. You weren't, there chomping at the bit, going, where are my files? Where's that contract? Where's such and such? So the decryption process itself can take a day or two. And again, if you have monkeyed with things, if you have tried to recover stuff on your own, you may be out of luck because you may not be able to get those files back. So what other options do we have? Restore. You got a good backup, so let's just restore that. Well, how long will the restore process take? How many restore points do you have? How much data are you willing to lose? Oops, not too far. So how long will the restore process take? A lot of the restores, particularly if you're doing cloud-based stuff, you may be a week getting that stuff back down. Now, if it's a lot of stuff and you're with somebody, a lot of vendors will send you a seed drive, so they'll download your files onto a USB drive and mail it to you, but you're still talking 3 or 4 days. If you need that, if it's mission critical, that may not be a good idea. And how many restore points do you have? Are you still doing nightly backups? 1 backup a night? Are you willing to lose data? I've got a buddy that got hit and they ended up losing, they got hit just before their backup window started. They noticed it the next day and had to restore from the prior day. So it happened, say, Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, backup starts at 9. They came in Wednesday, noticed everything was bad. They tried to check Tuesdays. Nope, Tuesdays is encrypted. So they had to restore to Monday. And it took all day Wednesday, so Thursday is the new Tuesday.
And then it's your bandwidth.
Yeah, I mean, if it's, if
And
you've
I
got it
don't know,
on
if
the
you
cloud,
do the temporary thing, it's still gonna take you a couple of days, depending upon who you use, your
Yeah.
vendor.
James, can I just throw something? I do some talks about disaster recovery as well. And the thing that's really important when you start talking about this is to realize that you need to grab management into this. This is not an IT
No.
thing alone. This is management. They need to understand that while you're working on all this problem, you're probably not getting any work done.
Yeah, okay.
So if you're a firm like us, almost 100 people, our average billing rate is $100 an hour. Most of our people work 10, 12 hours a day. You start doing that math, even 1 day's worth of downtime
Yeah.
to restore from a really good backup can cost your firm a lot of money. So make sure when you start talking to your management people that they understand all this. Because I've been to tons of presentations, disaster recovery, ransomware, any of those major disasters in your network almost always results in the IT guy looking for a new job at the end of it, kind of thing. So protect
career altering
yourself.
event.
Yeah, protect yourselves, bring your management into it. So it was like, hey, I explained this to you. You said it was okay that we could lose 2 days of productivity at $80,000 a thing to implement the system. Or give me the money and really could do it.
And get it in writing.
Yeah.
That, I mean, it's not gonna help you keep the job, but at
Even
least
if
you
you
can
have that
explain that job.
conversation and this happens, you're probably gonna lose your job anyways afterwards, but you got a better chance of keeping it if your management truly understands what the downsides.
All right, so what are my recommendations? Run anti-malware. Run antivirus that stops encryption. Have your firewall and email filters up to date, good stuff that is protecting you. Train your staff. Don't open crap. Yeah. I mean, that's how most of it gets in. I had a client that, luckily, we had switched them to a new service, and like 2 weeks later, one of the staff members opened an email and everything got encrypted. 37,000 files. And it was, I mean, their pictures and stuff, and their documents. They're a small, not-for-profit. They'd have been dead otherwise. But we were good. Boom. Switched it back, and they were back up within an hour or two. So backups that can take multiple snapshots a day. As many as you're willing to afford. And something that has a quick recovery time. Something that'll verify the image. There are devices out there that you can get that'll do backups on site, back up your devices to the appliance, and you can have a recovery time that's almost non-existent. You can spin up a virtual machine from any of those backups. So if you have a problem with your server, with your device, you can spin it up and have it up and running on this appliance in 7, 10, 12 minutes. A little longer than it would take to boot up the server in the first place. And then you can restore that to your server at your leisure. You can wait for the weekend, you can wait for a holiday weekend, you can wait to whenever you need to when you have the opportunity to restore it, because it'll continue to back up. And the device that I'm thinking about also backs up to the cloud. So you've got on-premise backup and unlimited cloud backups. If your building, if aliens take your building, as Bob likes to say, you can spin up any of your backups in the cloud and access them. I had one of my clients that had, the accountants in this room will know Engagement. It's a paperless audit tool that we use. And we were doing an engagement update last minute because the managing partner needed something the next day that we've been postponing for 3 or 4 months. So we went to do it, and it blew up the SQL database on the server. We had to get a restore process going. The restore was going to take 7 hours to restore to the server. So we spun it up as a virtual machine on the appliance in about 10 minutes, let it run there for the rest of the week, and then we restored from that back to the virtual host. And then at that time, it was still continuing to do backups of that image, and we could have spun up any other machine we needed. We could have spun up other iterations of the machine and looked for other files, whatever we needed to do.